Diet drinks have a dark side. Measles, like Limp Bizkit, is inexplicably making a comeback. APhA responds to recent actions by brand new Health Secretary RFK Jr., and blind children may finally be able to see again. That's just some of what we're talking about on today's super packed and super long RX report, where you get your health and your news delivered. It's March Eve, February 28th, here in the home of pharmacy at the American Pharmacists Association, and I'm your host, Manuel. I've never meant this more when I say we've got a lot to talk about today. So be sure to click that like and subscribe, leave a comment on anything and everything we talked about today, and let's dive in. When is the last time you thought about measles? Probably not recently. Like we've talked about with tuberculosis a few weeks ago, measles was a disease that was pretty much dead in the States. Though a problem in many other areas of the world, thanks to ready access to vaccines and treatment, measles has not been an issue for America for many, many years. But recently, this news broke.
Health officials are sounding the alarm now as the number of measles cases in West Texas continues to grow, up to 90 now, tripling in just a matter of days.
Now, measles is a highly contagious disease that spreads through the air when an infected person coughs or sneezes. Its symptoms include a rash, fever, cough, and runny nose, with more serious complications like pneumonia or even brain swelling possible, especially for kids.
Yes, much like that Nokia phone that just refuses to die, measles has come back with a vengeance recently in both Texas and New Mexico, infecting almost 100 people, most of them being kids as of this recording. And it's not just 2025. 2024 had 285 confirmed cases of measles in the U.S., according to the CDC. Measles is no joke. It is extremely contagious and can make those who contract it extremely sick and even die, with 1 in 5 unvaccinated measles victims ending up hospitalized. So why the sudden surge in a disease, again, long thought eradicated from American life? Well, unlike a lot of those clickbaity videos you see, the answer will probably not surprise you.
Of the 90 cases in this outbreak, 85 are unvaccinated or have an unknown vaccination status.
That's right. In addition to forcing many of us indoors, pushing us to watch sourdough tutorials, and teaching many of us the definition of the term cabin fever, the pandemic had another unfortunate side effect. Since the start of the pandemic, vaccine rates for measles began falling sharply, making many more vulnerable to the disease. According to the New York Times, vaccine rates against measles sat at less than 93% last year. And I know that sounds like a decent passing A grade, but believe me when I say that even a few percent beneath 100 can result in massive ramifications for the vulnerable. In fact, as of recording, we just got unfortunate news that one of the infected children in Texas died. The child was one of 18 unvaccinated that were sadly hospitalized. This outbreak is just the latest example of how the lower vaccine rate has resulted in avoidable deaths. That's the story, and I'll keep you posted on more developments going forward, but I want to make sure this isn't just me talking to you, but more of a conversation. So let me ask you, what are your thoughts on the measles outbreak? Are you or someone you know affected by the outbreak? Let me know in those comments, and I might feature some in the next show. Moving on to our next story. Waves have been made in Washington, D.C. and the country beyond with widespread federal layoffs. A report from USA Today cited that over 10,000 have been laid off by the Trump administration over numerous departments, not including the roughly 75,000 employees who took the buyout offered. This has removed many employees from departments including USAID, which we talked about a few weeks ago. Health and Human Services, the National Institutes of Health, the Centers for Disease Control, the Food and Drug Administration, and many, many more have all been affected. The removal of these employees will have undeniably huge effects that are still being discovered, but some of those effects are being discovered much sooner than others. Not only that, but the federal employees who remain in these important roles, many of which are pharmacists, are being hit with what can only be described as conflicting messages, disrupting their usual responsibilities and services to the American people. APhA recently sent a letter to the administration on this topic, arguing that the removal of employees from these departments would have significant unintended consequences for reducing Americans' access to high-quality, cost-effective healthcare. Pharmacists who were laid off from their positions were directly involved with providing patient care to military members across all branches, patients in U.S. prisons, and those needing care in the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency Health Corps. Losing those workers has been so devastating to the departments they work for that the HHS secretary recently rescinded the layoffs for the Indian Health Service because of how catastrophic their removal would be. IHS had a 30% healthcare practitioner vacancy rate before the Reduction in Force Act was implemented, meaning that a health department that was already suffering from a lack of employees was about to be gutted even further. Sadly, IHS's position is not unique in that their low staff levels are being made cripplingly lower. These are healthcare providers doing good work at these departments, and though a need to lower healthcare and government costs is one that should be taken care of, any consolidation should be done more thoughtfully, rather than using a sledgehammer without understanding the impact of meeting our nation's healthcare needs. APhA also sent a recent separate letter to the new Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., regarding the recent Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or ACIP, and the delay of ACIP's regularly scheduled meeting. ACIP is an independent group of experts that recommends vaccine policy to the CDC, and it was scheduled for the first meeting under RFK's watch, but was then delayed pending review. According to a report from Politico, the delay was in part due to RFK's purpose to remove members of the ACIP who advise on vaccine policy, vaccine schedules for adults and children, and other key public health decisions. APHA's letter clarified that the importance of the subject matter expertise on ACIP to the new HHS secretary, as any delays could impact vaccinations across the country. APhA also pointed out that despite pharmacists and pharmacy teams administering the majority of adult vaccines, pharmacists are not represented among the current voting members on the ACIP. APhA requested that RFK maintain the important role of ACIP and is hopeful that RFK will, quote, work with the CDC director to select a pharmacist as a voting member of the ACIP based on practical vaccination experience and medication expertise. The widespread layoffs and sudden postponement of an important healthcare committee meeting lead to massive implications for the future of accessible and scientifically sound vaccines and healthcare services, and the need for leadership in healthcare moving forward. APHA's letters on the subject represent the voice of the pharmacist and the profession of pharmacy as a whole, informing the new administration of the value of the pharmacist. But let me pass that question off to you. What are your thoughts on the ACIP meeting delay? Were you or someone you know affected by the layoffs? And if so, let us know what you're thinking right now in the comments below. Now, we'll get to our next big story in a second, but right now it's time for some small ones on quick doses. Moving on to some good news. Our first dose focuses on blind children being given some much-needed hope back. A rare genetic mutation to a gene called AIPL1 has been causing childhood blindness, meaning that these kids are never given the chance to see in their lives. But a new gene therapy is changing the game. According to the BBC, 4 toddlers have gained life-changing improvements to their sight with this new treatment. Whereas before, toddlers that were affected by this mutation could barely distinguish between the differences of light and dark, after this new infusion, all parents of the patients reported huge improvements, with some of the affected children now able to draw and write. Very basically, the treatment involved injecting healthy copies of a defective gene back into the patient's eye, very early in their life to treat the condition. These gene copies contained a harmless virus which went through the retinal cells of the kids and then replaced the defective gene. Then the healthy genes kind of kickstarted this process, which helped the cells in the eye work better and survive longer. One of the parents noted that the post-treatment son was squinting now when they see the sunshine through a window. They were picking things up off the floor, grabbing their favorite toys, things that any kid should be able and excited to do. The doctors behind this study get a huge thank you from me, as they are our heroes of the day. Show hosting is thirsty work, so while we go into this next story, check out this video as I take a quick sip from this Dr. Pepper.
A new study found that consuming more than 2 liters of diet soda per week can increase the risk of an irregular heartbeat.
Well, yeah, it turns out artificial sweeteners like aspartame, saccharin, and sucralose may be contributing towards cardiovascular health disease. In the classic trolley problem fashion, in people's effort to keep from becoming obese, which in itself can give you heart issues, one of the methods of doing so will still give you heart issues. This is why we can't have nice things. Scientists gave some mice the equivalent of 3 diet drinks a day for over 12 weeks. Then they compared those, no doubt, wired mice to other mice who were fed a diet without aspartame, and another group who ate a diet with 15% regular sugar. The point of the study was to see how the mice's insulin levels reacted to their respective diets. The mice straight up jamming onto 3 cans of aspartame had an insulin level spike, which could result in greater hunger, low blood sugar, and you guessed it, further strain on the cardiovascular system. The study, which was published in the journal Cell Metabolism, noted that these insulin spikes would contribute to insulin resistance, which could then lead to type 2 diabetes. So, what should we take from this story? Basically, limit your artificial sweetener intake. Though it may feel like you're keeping yourself in better shape by not drinking more sugary drinks, the long-term effects of artificial sweeteners could more or less land you in an even worse spot. Does anybody know of maybe a half-decent Dr. Pepper replacement? For our last quick dose, a quick reminder that the APhA annual meeting is just weeks away. Coming to Nashville March 21st to the 24th, the annual meeting is where you can upgrade your practice and patient care, meeting people from all walks of pharmacy life, all in one location. Certificate training programs, physical assessment workshops, digital health summits, and so much more are available. So what are you waiting for? Go to aphameeting.pharmacist.com and register today. In another instance of history repeating itself, Alabama pharmacists performed an official walkout this past Tuesday to support PBM reform, aka Pharmacy Benefit Manager reform. The reform being asked for deals with fair reimbursement policies from PBMs. PBMs are kind of like the boogeyman of this show, as they consistently pop up in various stories of pharmacists getting the raw end of the deal in low drug reimbursement and patient coverage. Since 2018, close to 13% of pharmacies in Alabama closed, and that's according to the Alabama Independent Pharmacy Alliance. Like the Iowa and Missouri pharmacist walkout stories that we've run, pharmacists are making their voices heard due to the very unfair business practices that their services have had to endure. I'm getting a whole lot of deja vu here. Now, whether you are the pharmacists on the ground working with patients, or you work for the PBMs who have been criticized countrywide for their inflated price gouging of patients and pharmacists, I've got to pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts on this walkout? Have PBMs affected your practice if you're a pharmacist, or have they affected your drug prices if you're a patient? Let me know in those comments. All right, and now for our next story, I've got a very special guest in the studio with me here today. Michael Hogue, CEO of APhA, the American Pharmacists Association, is here to talk to me about PBM reform, aka Pharmacy Benefit Manager. We've talked a lot about this on this show before, but now we're hearing it straight from the CEO of APhA. So Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mason.
It's great to have you here. Thank you so much. I've got a lot of questions for you, but first off, I just want to kind of hear a bit from you. Tell us where PBM reform is right now in Congress.
Well, Congress has really been incredibly slow to act. They should have taken action months and months ago, and we all know that. And, we just had a hearing this week in the Energy and Commerce Committee and the Health Subcommittee on PBM reform. So, it's beginning to get some attention again, bipartisan bill, and we're hopeful that it'll pass in this session. And hopefully before the end of March, we'll have some good news.
So this bill, walk us through it a little bit. It's called the End PBMs Now campaign. Why are we relaunching that?
So APhA has an incredible reach into the grassroots efforts to raise awareness around bills that need to pass in Congress. And it's one of the strengths of an association. And so we launched this campaign to try to mobilize consumers and pharmacists to write letters to their members of Congress and to help their members of Congress understand why we can't wait any longer for PBM reform measures to pass through Congress. It needs to happen right now.
So for anybody listening who maybe hasn't seen this campaign but is interested in getting involved, how can they get involved? How can they make their voices heard?
Well, it's fairly simple. If you just visit the website, npbmsnow.com.
Okay. I'll put that up on the screen.
You can go to that website, and inside that website, there's a lot of information for you that will be helpful. You can share this website actually with your patients. If you're a pharmacist listening to this and you want to share this with consumers, share it. And then you just click on a link that's in the website. It'll take you directly to the place where you can send a letter to your members of Congress and ask them to vote in support of this bill.
I love it when a plan comes together. You make it sound really easy and simple. I guess that's kind of by design. Anybody can just get involved any way they want with that kind of pathway that you've made.
All you need is your handheld device, 60 seconds, and push a button. You're there, and you can make a huge difference in trying to get this bill passed in Congress.
Cool. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing that in Congress. We'll see what happens. But what are the next steps in Congress? And I mean, to be honest, what are the realistic chances of getting a win on PBM reform at this point?
Well, I think we remain incredibly optimistic that Congress is going to do something. And we've heard directly from the president that PBM reform is something that he thinks is important. We know that both the Senate and the House of Representatives have found this incredibly important, and we have bipartisan support. In fact, in the hearing that occurred this week in the House of Representatives, both the Democratic and Republican members of Congress unanimously said that they would support PBM reform happening now, even as a standalone bill. And so we'll just see how this moves through. And I believe, the big budget wrangle is about to happen in March. And we're all going to see what's going to happen with the budget. We think that maybe through that reconciliation, that's the place where this bill might actually pass, is at that moment.
So there's a new administration in Washington after the 2024 election. Is there still an appetite to get PBM reform done?
Well, President Trump, when he was running for election on multiple occasions, said in public interviews that he thought that PBM reform and addressing middlemen in the pharmaceutical process had to get done and was a high priority of his. So we're going to take him at his word and hope that he follows through with the commitment that he made when he ran for election.
So we've got bipartisan support. We've got a big campaign from us, like trying to get people to be activated on this issue. So it sounds like we're pretty hopeful about change coming in the near future.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think change is going to happen. I think we're going to hold our members of Congress accountable for making change happen. We have every confidence that when the bill passes, that the president will sign it into law. And we'll be making progress. But Mason, I do want to just make it clear that this does not solve all of our problems. And this bill is just simply a good start to reforming the way pharmaceuticals are paid in our system. And there's still going to be lots of work for us to do. So we need pharmacists to continue to engage with APhA and to continue to be involved, because this is a long haul issue. This is not something that one fix is going to correct for the rest of time.
The first step on the long road ahead, sounds like.
Absolutely.
APhA CEO Michael Hogue, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Mason. Appreciate it.
And that is our show. Thank you so much for watching. If this podcast made you want to party with some super sugar high mice, then maybe consider giving the show a like and subscribe. Leave us a comment and let us know your thoughts on anything we talked about today. And I mean anything, from PBMs to Blind Kids Sing Again. I would love to know what you think. Our executive producer is Rob Hodges. Our creative producer is Kate Erdmann. And until next time, I've been your host, Mason Manuel. Be sure to tune in next Friday for your next RX report, where you get your health and your news delivered. But till then, bye y'all.